Hello everybody, how's it going? Jacqueline Michelle here. I hope this video finds you very well, and I hope that it is able to resonate with you and give you a little bit of guidance if you are going through something like this, or if somebody you love is going through something like this. I very recently just came back from a beautiful retreat called Women and Wildlife, where we had the opportunity to connect as women and get very naked and very raw and very vulnerable, not only physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. And some of the things that came up in deep personal and intimate conversation was how many women are survivors of sexual assault. And it was really heartbreaking, but also very nourishing to know that we aren't alone. This is something that is happening to a lot of women. And even within this past week, even after the Women and Wildlife Retreat, I've had several women come up to me, or at least DM me on Instagram, not to mention the amount of women that have reached out to me before, but this week specifically, talking about their abuse and trying to figure out how to cope, how to manage, how do you overcome something that's so traumatic and that isn't really talked about. And I am here to support you through that. And I'm here to definitely listen to you and to believe you and give you these tools so that you can understand that there is access to healing. There is access to forgiveness. There is access to healthy sex. There is access to self-love and healthy boundaries and just releasing that trauma and knowing that you don't have to hold on to this weight anymore. There is a space in your life and a space in your psyche and a space in your body where you can say, okay, this happened and I'm going to take it off and leave it where it is. And it's important that we don't take it off and ignore it, right? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we take it off and we release it. We say, okay, this is something that happened. It's going to be an imprint of the woman that I am today, but the woman that I am today is no longer a victim. She is a survivor. And I want every single woman that is a survivor of sexual assault to know that she has access to this. So in this video, we're going to be talking about 8 steps on how to move past your sexual assault, on how to heal from it. I'm going to continuously look down here because I have my laptop with me. I wrote down some notes so I can go in order and make sure I don't miss any pieces, but I'm still with you, so don't feel like me looking down is a form of disconnection. I just want to make sure that I get these pieces in. So the first part of healing is accepting that it happened. And this is super, super, super important because I know it can be very easy to suppress it into your psyche or to pretend like it didn't happen or to overindulge yourself in substances or in works or in work or in relationships so that you don't have to face it. And I want you to know that the longer you store it, the longer that you're holding on to it, the deeper and more ingrained it is going to get into your psyche and into your mind. So I know it can be very, very uncomfortable. I know it can be very triggering. I know it can be very disheartening and all the other uncomfortable emotions that come through that. But it's very important that you give yourself the space to realize what has happened and to face it, to address it. That is truly the only way we can heal, is to actually getting into the nitty-gritty of the trauma and the memory that is within us that is causing us to close down or to maybe even be a little bit more unconsciously overactive in our relationships and our love life. So my first invitation to you is accept it. And maybe you just hang out in the acceptance phase just for a little bit. Maybe you just sit with it and say, okay, I was raped. I was molested, I was assaulted, right? And give yourself access to saying it out loud. You don't have to say it to another person right away, but at least allow yourself to vocalize and imprint it and say, yes, this happened, right? That's the only way that we're going to be able to get over this. So step 1 is accepting that. Step 2 is self-forgiveness. I know there are a lot of survivors out there, myself included, that were feeling a lot of blame and a lot of responsibility on the assault that happened to them. And I just want you to know that it was not your fault at all. It doesn't matter if you were under the influence of anything. It doesn't matter if you had intercourse or any type of relationship with this person beforehand. It doesn't matter the clothes you were wearing. It doesn't matter if you are already a super sexually active human being. Literally, who you are, what you have done, what you think, none of that shit matters. Assault, rape, molestation is never, ever, ever your fault. And I think it's very, very, very important that you allow yourself to forgive. Like, just say, okay, get this weight up and off your chest and up and off your shoulders and say, this isn't my fault. You are not responsible for what happened to you. The abuser is responsible for what happened to you. If you need a little example, one of the ways that we can think about this is you're driving a car, right? And you're going in this direction and then a car T-bones you. You're not responsible for that car accident, right? You're not going to sit there and say, damn it, I shouldn't have gone to the grocery store at 3:30 in the afternoon. I should have known better. No, that you would never say that to somebody, right? Same thing if somebody was getting mugged, right? What do you tell somebody whenever they're getting mugged? You say, yeah, you give them your wallet, give them your phone. All you have to do is protect yourself. You're not going to blame the person that got mugged and saying, oh, well, you shouldn't have been there, or you shouldn't have had that much money in your wallet, or you shouldn't have had your iPhone in your hand, because of course somebody's going to want to steal it. No, it is never the victim's fault. It is the perpetrator's fault, responsibility, and that is to blame for this. So please know that none of this has to do with you or the trauma. The healing has to do with you. The act itself has nothing to do with you. You are not at fault. Step 3 is learning how to process false beliefs. So our minds after assault can be a very dark place to be. And so it's super important that we're conscientious of the narratives that are coming in our mind that may be keeping us from healing. So some of the things that we may be telling ourselves is, I deserved it. I slept with them before, so they had a right, especially if this is an intimate partner that you've had before. It's happened before. So if you feel like you talk or report about another assault again, that people are going to be thinking that you're asking for attention. I know that was something that was very difficult for me. I was assaulted several times throughout my childhood, and I made a report once, and then shit kind of hit the fan, and then it happened again, and I was like, well, I don't want to put anybody through any of that ever again, so let me just keep my mouth shut. Please report it every single time and talk about it and process it every single time it happens. 4, I'm going to be super vulnerable with you guys and talk to y'all about the narrative that I had to help me subconsciously cope with some of the things that I was going through. My assault was very repetitive for several years throughout my life, and I created this narrative within my head, and I started telling myself, well, I'm so attractive and I'm so irresistible that men just can't keep their hands off me. They don't know how to respect me. And so I started to give myself this narrative that, like, because I'm so whatever it is, like because I'm so attractive or because I'm so powerful, like men don't know how to keep their hands off me. And that is such an unhealthy narrative for me to have. And I'm sure there's other women out there that may be processing this trauma in the same way, because it doesn't matter how beautiful you are, how magnetic you are, how powerful you are. It literally, none of those things matter. No matter where you are, a human being should always respect your boundaries, should always respect your space, and should never have any right to violate you in any way, shape, or form. So I ask you to kind of check in with yourself and maybe even write down the things that you're saying. If you're saying, I deserved it, I shouldn't have been there, I've had sex with this person before, or I'm so beautiful and boys will be boys, so this is why that happened. These are false subconscious beliefs that are ingrained into your mind, and it's very important that you realize what they are and then very gently release them. I'll create a video here later on how to change false beliefs and turn them into a healthy narrative. But for the sake of the time of this video, I just want you to address and know that some of the things that you may be telling yourself and that may be getting in the way of your healing could be very detrimental. And chances are and not chances are, I know for 110% fact, you didn't deserve it. You could have had sex with this human being 10 million times, and if you didn't want to do it the 10 millionth and first time, then they shouldn't have done that. You can be beautiful, you can be erotic, you can be a sex worker, you can be whatever it is. Rape is never your fault. People should always respect your body. Okay? So my love to you if those are some of your narratives. Number 4 is it's going to be two sides of the spectrum, and I went through both, and I know that other survivors are either at least on one side, and that is going to be either the fear of having sex after assault or unconscious promiscuity after assault. Both are valid, and both are very, 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 very common for survivors to try to figure out how to cope or how to take control of their body all over again, right? One of the things that I want you to know is that whether it may feel this way or not, your body and your psyche are always doing their best to protect you. So no matter what it is that you're doing, it's in efforts to keep you safe. So please don't blame yourself or shame yourself or regret the decisions that you are doing or have done in the past. So the fear of having sex is completely normal, because not only is the memory of your assault stored in your mind, it is also living in the body. So any specific touch, body movement, or even the thought of having a human enter you again can be very triggering, because the mind and body may feel as though it is under attack all over again. So another way of giving yourself a little bit extra leeway to say, okay, it's all right. If I don't want another human being to touch me right now, you have a right to that boundary, and understand that even though you may be processing it here, the body is also processing it. Let's say the same person in the example before gets into a car accident, and it's a really traumatizing, really gnarly car accident, right? And they go to the hospital, and they get stitched up, all that good jazz, and then they feel a little bit of fear of getting back into a car. Of course they're going to have that fear of getting back into a car. Something very traumatic just happened to them mentally, emotionally, and physically. So it may take them a little bit of time to feel safe, to put themselves back into that situation. So if you are finding yourself very uncomfortable or very disconnected or very afraid, that there was literally a time in my life not that long ago that I was afraid of another human touching me. I was even afraid of going out on dates because I didn't even want to put myself in a situation where I may or may not be triggered. So if that's something that you're going through in terms of processing your assault, that's okay. And give yourself that little bit of space of saying, okay, I don't want another human being to touch me right now. That's all right. The other side of that spectrum is going to be unconscious promiscuity. I'm going to read off my laptop again. So unconscious promiscuity is also very common. And I know for myself, and I didn't realize this years later, is that I chose to be unconsciously promiscuous because this was my way of taking power over my body and over my sex life. So my assault, and whether your assault only happened once or if it happened several times, but I know for me, because my assault was so repetitive and it was the way I was introduced into sex, I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and put myself in these situations, and let me go ahead and have sex with this person so that I don't have to risk being molested or being put or being raped in somebody having sex with me. Sex is not assault. I mean, assault is not sex. That's why I put the quotation marks. But so I wouldn't have to risk somebody having sex with me when I didn't want to. So if you find yourself being unconsciously promiscuous, check in with that. And I know for me, like, I don't regret the unconscious promiscuity that I went through, because I trust that that was what I needed to do to reclaim my body. That's what I needed to do to say, I'm in power. I'm going to choose when I have sex. I'm going to choose when I'm entered, right? I'm not promoting or supporting unconscious promiscuity, but I'm saying if that's something that you are going through or went through in terms of trying to process your trauma, that is very valid. And it could be because that was you trying to gain control of your body. So if that's something that you are doing or were doing, then I invite you to check in with both sides of the spectrum, either fear of sex or overactive unconscious sex, and saying, okay, what can I do to once again forgive myself, know where this act and this fear or this belief system is coming from, and how can I invite healthy relationships and a healthy sex life into my life now, right? So that's number 4, understanding where you may be on the scale of sex and sexuality. Number 5 is going to be feeling your anger. So you have every single right in the world to feel anger, disgust, rage, sorrow, feel victimized, feel pity, feel disconnected, feel literally any emotion that is grotesque. You have every single right in the world to feel it. And in a society where we have been reared, especially women, to not be angry, to not yell, to not be hysterical, to not, all this, that, and the third, it's super important that you give yourself access to this feeling. Now, let's talk about what feelings are. A feeling is created by a thought that creates an emotion. An emotion is energy in motion. So when you begin to feel the emotion of anger or rage and disgust, it's super important that you don't suppress it or that you don't numb it out. It's super important that you allow that energy to move. It needs to move through the body so that it doesn't store itself within you. And some of the ways that emotions can store themselves in you if you don't release them, that can look like cancer, that can look like vulvodynia, that can look like vaginal dryness, that can look like vaginal numbness, that can look like a tense jaw or headaches or anxiety. So that's why it's super important that you give yourself access to feeling the rage, feeling the anger, feeling the disgust. You have every single right to allow that to process through you, to allow that to come through. So I want to say that, yeah, fucking get angry. You have every right to be fucking angry. You were violated. You were abused in a way that didn't feel good. You were touched or spoken to and experienced something that made you feel small and made you feel out of control and made you feel disempowered. Nobody should ever feel like that ever. So validate yourself and say, yes, I'm fucking angry and this is why. Cool. Now, number 6 is going to be learning how to release that anger. Coming from a survivor, I want to talk to you about, there's different ways of releasing anger, right? There is unhealthy coping mechanisms, and then there are healthy coping mechanisms. An unhealthy coping mechanism is going to be something that doesn't allow you to process. It's just something to kind of spew out or to suppress. So some of the ways that we may be doing that is over or under eating. Maybe we are overworking. Maybe we are continuously putting ourselves in new relationships so that we don't have the space or the time or the solitude to process what's happening. And I also want to talk about self-harm. One of the ways that I processed my trauma was through cutting myself. And I was a cutter for 7 years of my life. And I want you to know that I understand why it can be a super quick, easy tactic of trying to say, okay, this is my body, I'm in control. Or okay, I'm out of my mind and in my body and I'm here in the present moment. Or for me, it was even like, I deserve this. Like I deserve to be in pain. I deserve to make myself bleed. And even through all that blood that was coming out, excuse my phone, with the blood that was coming out, I did feel that release. It literally felt like, oh, okay, cutting myself, that feels so much better. And I want you to know that I understand. I understand why you want to do that and why it feels good to do that. I want you to know that it isn't healthy. Once again, you don't deserve to feel pain. You don't deserve to be hurt. You don't deserve to slit your skin open or to burn yourself or to snap rubber bands on yourself or whatever other, or to hit yourself, any other coping mechanism that is painful. You don't deserve that. And there are other ways of releasing that intense, almost drowning emotion. There's other ways of releasing that. So let's get into some healthy coping mechanisms. Journaling. Write that shit out. Journaling helps you process everything that's going on in your mind, right? Sometimes there could be so many thoughts that are jumbling around, and just getting a piece of paper and a pen and focusing on one, or just allowing it to like free flow. It could be chicken scratch, but as long as you're getting it up and out of the body, up and out of the mind, that's going to be really healthy. Intuitive movement of any kind, or conscious movement of any kind. This can look like running, weightlifting, yoga, ecstatic dance, shadow alchemy. Once again, this goes back to not allowing yourself to suppress the anger, but getting into movement and letting that energy, that emotion, that sensation up and out of your body. There are several different avenues of that, so I'll let you kind of pick and choose which one serves you. Meditation and breath work, finding mental stillness is going to help you not overindulge or replay the event over and over and over again, because imagination is very powerful, fantasy is very powerful, and sometimes the mind isn't going to know what's real and what's imagination. So if you're continuously putting yourself into that memory, you're putting yourself back into a trauma loop, and the mind and the body are going to respond as though the assault is happening all over again, even if it was years before, right? You also have the option to do other things, painting, paint that shit out. I know that was something that one of my therapists had me do when I was really young, was paint the anger, paint the happiness, paint the everything that you're fucking feeling, drawing, hiking, screaming into a fucking pillow. Like, I still do that shit when I'm super angry. Punching and hitting a pillow is super beneficial, because once again, we are acknowledging the anger and we are releasing it. So finding several coping mechanisms that are going to help you physically and emotionally and mentally address the trauma, the pain, the memory that you are feeling is going to be very, very healthy. So the 7th, I don't know which number I'm on. The next one. The next one is going to be self-pleasure. Self-pleasure, please take your time when it comes to this. The reason self-pleasure is very important. Self-pleasure is essentially just the practice of touching yourself with love and touching yourself consciously. And for some of us, especially for survivors of sexual assault, and we feel very afraid of giving or receiving touch or being physically and sexually intimate with another human being, that's normal. And know that you don't have to jump right into the bedroom. Self-pleasure and conscious touch can literally just be putting a timer on your phone for 5 minutes and caressing your arms. And as you're caressing your arms, giving yourself a moment to just feel what it's like to have the fingertips touch the arm and how to have the arm touch the fingertips. And once this feels comfortable and once this feels safe, you can begin to move to the legs. And once again, it doesn't have to be anything other than giving yourself a moment to ground yourself and say, okay, I'm safe in my body. My body is healthy. My body is protected. It's okay for me to receive touch. It's okay for me to touch. And again, take your time with it. Once you begin to feel more comfortable with that, I do suggest, wearing very minimal clothing and beginning to caress the belly, beginning to even massage your breasts and releasing and activating and tending to all the emotions and all the trauma that we may be feeling here. Maybe your abusers touched your breast and it has been very difficult for you to get back in contact with. Maybe you're storing a lot of emotion in the heart or in the chest area, or maybe you feel like you have all these barriers and all these boundaries and there's fear, right? So tending to this part of the body is going to open you up. And once again, it doesn't have to be sexual. I'm not saying, be sexual with yourself. If you feel called to do that, by all means. But this is more about being sensuous, right? Being in the body, being in tune with the present moment. And in this present moment right now, you are safe, right? So having that relationship with yourself. Once you feel comfortable caressing the arms, the legs, the belly, the breasts, then I invite you to move to your vulva, right? Unfortunately, this is probably where your trauma was directly affected to. And giving yourself the time and the space and the love to get back in touch with your vulva, get back in touch with your vagina, get back in touch with your cervix. And once again, it doesn't have to be sexual. I'm not saying masturbate. I'm not saying bring yourself to orgasm. I'm saying very gently placing your hands or your palm or a crystal wand or a yoni egg, if that's something that you want to add into your practice, and massaging yourself in that way and saying, okay, I am safe here, and it's okay for me to feel love in this part of my body, and it's okay for me to reintroduce these beautiful, very powerful, very intimate sensations back into my life, because you deserve to have a very healthy relationship with your body and a very healthy relationship with your sex life after assault. And I know that it can feel very, very far-fetched. I know that. but these practices will help your mind, it will help your body. And then also, once again, because an emotion gets stored in there, we could be storing the disgust and the anger and the rage in this part of the body. So once again, massaging that side of yourself, massaging the walls of your vaginal canal, massaging the vulva, massaging the outer lips is going to move that energy up and out. If later on you begin to feel more comfortable and you do want to turn this into a conscious masturbation practice, I highly, highly, highly suggest that also. But of course, take your time. If this takes months for you to get there, then take every single month in the calendar until you feel ready and until you feel prepared to do that. One of the things that I do want to let you know that is in the process of caressing yourself and in the process of doing self-pleasure practices, emotions are going to come up. And it can be very triggering. It can be very emotionally displeasing. It could be enraging. If I can be truly transparent with you guys, there were so many times in me starting to do self-pleasure practices and having a yoni egg in my womb and palo santo in my hand and trying to figure out why the fuck this happened and why the fuck I felt rage and why the fuck I had to go through this and why the fuck God made, like, why God felt as though I deserved this. I mean, it can bring up a lot of rage and a lot of tears and like gut-wrenching sobs. At least that's how it was for me. And I want you to know that's okay. And know that the anger that's coming up and the tears that are coming up and the yelling and the punching and everything that you're experiencing in the process of self-pleasure is valid. And it means that energy is waking up in the body and you're releasing it, right? So please don't feel embarrassed. I know I felt very embarrassed. Please don't feel ashamed. So please don't feel like you're broken. You're not. You're completely whole. You're completely perfect. And I say that from the bottom of my heart. There's nothing wrong with you. It's just there's some things that we need to tend to as survivors to feel safe in our body. And the more that we tend to that and the more energy and the more emotion that we release and we say we don't fucking want it. It no longer has to be a part of our story. It no longer has to be a part of our life. It no longer has to control me or the way that I move through my relationships or the way that I think about myself. When you claim that for yourself, it will feel better and better and safer and more pleasurable and more orgasmic. And it's a journey. It's a journey. And I'm here for anybody. My DMs are open. My emails are open. So if that's something that you're processing through, I'm here to support you 110% because I remember what it was like. And it was very, very difficult. So I'm here for you. We have 2 more little steps. And that will put an end to our video. The second to last one is going to be a little controversial. And if you are not in a space to even receive this step, then you can place it down and pick it up when you're ready. The second to last one is going to be to forgive your abuser. And when I say forgiveness, I don't mean invite them back over or to not hold them accountable or once again to pretend like nothing happened. That's not what I mean at all. This person does need to be held accountable. This person should not be allowed back into your life. What I mean by forgiving your abuser is by releasing that hold or that clench that you may have on this person. I want to see what I wrote because I want to make sure that I say this correctly. Yeah, so basically exactly what I just said. Like I said, like if it doesn't serve you, then it doesn't serve you. If it feels like being angry and placing blame on that person is still a very important part of your healing process, then please be angry at that person. You have every right to be angry at that person. Blame that person. You have every right to blame that person. It is their fucking fault. But know that there will come a time in your journey that forgiveness towards that person will naturally begin to happen. As you tend to yourself, as you begin to recultivate self-love and self-respect and awareness and safety within your own body, that tension, really that's what it is, that tension, this hold that you have on that memory and that experience will literally soften and soften and soften and soften. And there will come a time in your life where you may not even think of that person or you may not even think of that event, right? I'm not saying that it's not going to be a part of your life. You know, it is. Assault as survivors, it is a part of our story. But there will come there will come a time in your life where it isn't as painful. One of the things that I may also say, and I'm saying this from my own experience, and I'm sure there's other survivors out there that may relate to what I'm about to say, is there can be a time in your life where you become grateful for what happened. And I know that that's where I stand right now. And that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that, anything of that nature. But because of this trauma, I went through depression, and I went through drug abuse, and I went through self-harm, and I went through a wide spectrum of how to deal with my sexuality. And because I was in such a dark place, I found help. And my help came in various ways. It came through therapy, it came through Eastern philosophy and Eastern practices, it came from self-pleasure and conscious sexuality, and it also brought me to the point of being able to help myself and being able to help other women and other survivors of sexual assault. So I want you to know that it's not going to be icky or disgusting or gross forever. It's not going to be a big weight on you forever. And even if you don't become an advocate, even if you just live your life, willy-nilly, with purpose and intention in different ways, that's valid also. And I do want you to know that you have access to that, and it's just a journey. The last one is holding space for the things that resurface. Healing is not linear, right? You can go through the healing journey and be in a space in your life where the weight is off and you feel free and you feel liberated and you're back in touch with your body and you're having healthy sex and healthy conversations and healthy boundaries, and then boom, something triggers you and you feel right back at square one. So I want you to know that if that is the case, to hold space for that. It may or may not happen, but if it does, same exact steps of acceptance, of forgiveness, and feeling, and giving yourself permission to feel and transmute anything that's coming up for you. But yeah, those are my 8 to 9 little steps, little suggestions on what I want to give survivors on how to cope and how to manage and how to live life freely and in touch with their bodies again. Please don't feel like this is the only thing that you need to do. If talk therapy is something that you need to reach out to, by all means do that. There's psychosomatic sexual therapy, there is yoga therapy, there is coaching, there are tremendous amounts of support groups and different variations of counseling and healing. So please get your resources popping and help yourself in various arenas at various stages in your life. But yes, thank you so much for watching the entirety of this video. I hope it served you. I hope it resonated with you. And I hope you got some pieces out of it that can help you on your journey towards moving out of victimhood and in towards becoming a survivor. As always, all my love and all of my light. Namaste.